Alrighty. So we talked about this before. Our culture is certainly over-sexualized. Obviously, that trickles down to kids. You hear about kids sexting each other. You hear about that all the time on the news. What do parents need to communicate to their kids?
Well, first of all, it comes down to the law of exposure, which is whatever you're exposing yourself to, you're going to be perpetuating. So, if you have hundreds of thousands of images telling girls on every magazine that they're not thin enough, that they're too fat, or the way they can find affirmation is through, being sexual, then they're going to do that. I don't know why people are surprised when the law of exposure comes into play. What do parents need to tell kids? Well, obviously the very ultra-conservative Christian response is, wait till you're married. And ideally, that's great. That's a wonderful thing, and it would be great if everyone would do that. Realistically, probably not going to happen. So one of the things I tell kids is, look, never let your physical commitment to a person exceed your spiritual commitment to them. So if you're not 100% spiritually committed to that person, do not give everything away physically to that person. Because the other thing about it is when you're joining together in a sexual union, you are sharing a bit of your soul. There is a component to that a lot of kids emotionally, spiritually are not ready to really tango with or even mature enough to handle. And so then they're overwhelmed. So, I'm totally in love with this person because I've never experienced those physiological or spiritual feelings about this arena towards another person. So I try to tell kids, look, you're not really ready for this. Let's think about your physical and spiritual commitments. And once you give it away, it's gone.
But it's really hard to guide your children. I mean, you're only with them for a few hours a day.
Right.
I mean, they're obviously likely to be more influenced by their friends and what happens at school and
right.
What they're exposed to everywhere else.
Right. And that's the challenge, because when we were growing up, you and I, we waited by the phone for our girlfriend or boyfriend to call us, and we waited by the rotary phone. And when I picked up my mom, I could hear her picking up on the other end, trying to listen in, And so parents were trying to be parents back then. And today, all the kids have cell phones. They've got, Snapchat, Instagram. They've got Facebook. So the thing that you can do, and I do with my kids, is you monitor it. You monitor it, you look at what they're looking at, you talk to them about it, you actually bring up these issues of sexting, and you actually engage your kids. And I know people say, well, it's uncomfortable for me to talk about that with my kids. Well, be uncomfortable. Just talk to them, because they're talking about it with their friends. They're being influenced by the culture. The culture is talking to them about it. So you need to be at least another voice in their head, in their mind, in their ear, and talking to them about it and communicating your values and your morals around those issues to your children.
But you do have to walk a very fine line, because then you look at the other side of it, which I hate to bring it back up, but the Duggars.
Right. Yeah.
Totally shield their kids
right.
from any kind of exposure. I mean, these kids are homeschooled.
Right.
So as to mitigate, outside influences.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, that issue is not new. That there was a group of followers of God back in biblical times called the Essene Jews, and the Essene Jews believed that the way you could make God's will be done is you went off in a cave and you hid in a cave and you stayed away from the culture, because the culture would change your children and would influence your kids, and that's actually how we have the Dead Sea Scrolls, because they preserve those scrolls in the caves in those jars, and that's how we got that, because they secluded themselves from the rest of the culture. So that seclusion isn't really the answer. I mean, that's why Jesus said, you're to be the salt of the world. You're to be the light on the hill. In other words, you're part of the culture, but you can let the culture see the difference you make. So I don't think secluding your kids or repressing them totally like the Duggars does is the answer. It's not going to work. Your kids are just going to hate you. And you're actually being disadvantageous to them, because they're not going to be able to use technology the way they're going to be doing it in their jobs, in a way that I've never used it or you've never used it. They're going to be using technology in ways that we can't even think about right now. So they're going to need to be able to do that. But so I think you just need to talk to them about it, address it, monitor it. You can check their history. You can go on their phones. You can put apps on their phones that check their history. You can do those things and let them know you're going to monitor it. Especially when you're dealing with daughters, I think a daughter is going to be looking for, a lot of times young girls are looking for affirmation through a guy through another boy through sexuality. And so you need to find ways to try to build up their self-esteem and affirmation that is non-sexual. And you need to actually talk to them about it. And you need to actually look at their hearts and ask them about what is they're seeking. I don't think, I think counseling is a good idea. I think you can take them to a counselor, take them to a pastor, take them to someone, talk to them about what are they seeking, because oftentimes it's not the sexual act. For men, sex can be certainly much more physical. For women, it is a way of feeling loved. It is a way of feeling affirmed. It is a way of feeling I'm attractive. All those ways that we define women, that certainly is happening. So I think you want to basically talk to them, look for ways to build up their self-esteem and affirm their worth in non-sexual ways, because mostly what they're seeking is, am I worth something? Am I attractive? Is this, it's a way of defining themselves. And it's a horrible way to define yourself, because they're just not ready spiritually or emotionally for all that comes with that physical act of intercourse.
I'm not sure if the Bible says this, so correct me, but I know religious people often say your body's a temple.
Mm-hmm. The Bible does say that. The Bible does say that your body is a temple, and it's a way that, it is sacred space. And we know that on a lot of levels intuitively. I mean, that's what's behind sexual harassment laws. That's what's behind, boundaries. We all have a personal boundary. We all have personal space. And so we know that on a lot of levels. But your body is a temple. Your body is a place that is sacred. And there's more to it. Obviously, these bodies are made of dust, and they'll go back to dust, and they're a physical tent, if you will, that our soul lives in. But they're still sacred, and they're not meant to be violated or abused. And that's what's the evil of the sex slave trade and all that for children is just horrific, because that is a violation of God's creation, And it is something to sit down with someone and say, God knew you before you were even born. Psalm 139, 1 through 18 says, God created you and formed you and fashioned you and knew what you looked like before you were even born, and made your eyes the way they are, and your hair and your face and all those things. And so it's sacred that we're created by the same one that created the sun, the moon, the stars. And to me, that's pretty awesome. So it is a temple. Absolutely.